Thank you, Colin Smith. Colin Smith is a Westchester legislator representing District 1. He's worked to ensure fairer and more inclusive hiring practices throughout the city. Colin has worked closely with groups like the Peekskill Youth Bureau, Hudson River Healthcare, the Rotary Club, the Peekskill NAACP, and other organizations. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ridvan Foxhall. She is a licensed occupational therapist who has been helping youths with special needs and their families since 2010. She's also helped create a children's theater company that is focused on helping young children build a sense of community and help them create their own voice in their community. Her work with children has greatly impacted many lives and helped countless find their voice. Ridvan Foxhall.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Happy Juneteenth today to all of you. So first of all, I am so honored to be here because these young women called me and asked me to be here. And so I'm here to speak on their behalf. And I want to task you, when 8.5 minutes, we waited 8.5 minutes, George called for his mother. But you know what? He's calling for all of the mothers here and all of the parents here. Do not let Black people in your community down. It is time to change. Racism, as we know it, racism is one of the most baneful and persistent evils that plagues this country. It is eating away at the fabric of American life. And although it seems like it's working for white people, it really isn't. It really isn't, because I think you really have to take inventory of what's happening to the white community. Because as long as one part of the human race suffers, we all suffer. As long as one part of the human race suffers, we all suffer. I am hopeful though. I'm hopeful because I see so many of you here today. And today I'm going to address really the white community in my speech. Because many people have been calling me and asking me, what can we do? Well, we know and we've seen because of coronavirus that racism is systemic. It is systemic. It's in every system and it is affecting Black people. It is killing Black people. Racism is an underlying condition for Black people. Before coronavirus, racism was killing Black people, and now we see it. We see it right in front of us, and we cannot ignore it anymore. And we need to do something about it. So what do we do? What are systems? Our systems are our educational system, our prison system, our political system, our healthcare system, the environmental system, every system where Black people find themselves, they are suffering and they are dying. If you are just raising your children to not be racist is not enough. You have to raise your children to be anti-racist. Because if you're not intentionally raising your children to be anti-racist, I am sorry to say, they are being raised to be racists. And what do I mean by that? Our kids are being socialized every day by what they watch, by what they consume. We are all living in a very racist society. The system is not broken. The system is acting exactly as it was designed to from the very beginning. And we need to recognize that first before we can begin to make any changes. So what do? Let's start by educating ourselves about the real history. Make sure that our schools represent and teach the real history of this country. If you don't know what implicit bias is, look it up. It's a subconscious bias that we all hold. Across the board, white and Black people, we all have implicit bias. because we are breathing the air of racism every single day. So it is not the white supremacists that causes harm to me. It is the good people I live amongst that causes harm to me, because they are the ones that tease my children in school, whose children tease my children in school. They are the teachers that make sure that black boys and girls are in detention more than any other color. They are the people that keep me from getting housing and push me into neighborhoods that I don't want to be in. They push me out of neighborhoods that are nice neighborhoods. When I show up to buy houses or to be in a neighborhood, what happens is either the house is not available anymore, or when enough black people move into a neighborhood, white people take flight. These are good people. These are people who say, oh, racism, I'm not a racist. First of all, I'm going to ask, please get over the fact that when someone calls you a racist, that makes you a terrible person. Because it is the good people that pretend that racism does not exist that affect my life. It is not the Ku Klux Klan that keeps me from housing. It is not the Ku Klux Klan that keeps me, that when I go to the doctor does not listen to me when I tell them what's going on with my health. Implicit bias is in the healthcare system, and black lives are being affected by it. And these are our doctors. Implicit bias is in the political system. It is in the justice system, because we are all breathing this air of implicit bias. And that's effective. The microaggressions, these girls who talk about being bullied right here in your community. So what are we teaching our children? What are we telling our children? See, here's the thing. Many parents think we're not having these conversations with children, and we are good people. We have good values. So we don't talk about racism. But guess what? They are reading, they are seeing, they are being socialized to be racist. So if you're not having the conversations, they will use the N-word in school. They will tease black girls about their hair. They will make inappropriate comments to our children in schools, because you never had that talk with them. So it is time we start having those real talks with them, and stop saying we are colorblind and we're all one people and so we shouldn't see color. Let's do better, because we can do better. So today I was getting ready for the speech, and this email came into my mailbox, and I love these two paragraphs, so I'm going to read it to you because it gives me some hope. Amidst these tragedies, there are also signs of hope. The fact that you're here today gives me hope. Countless citizens have arisen to proclaim the truth that we are one nation, and to demand specific action to address the pervasive inequities that for too long have shaped our society. We have remembered who we aspired to be as a people and are determined to make a change for the better. This moment beckons us to a renewed commitment to realize the ideal of e pluribus unum, out of many, one, the very ideal upon which America was founded. To create a just society begins with recognition of the fundamental truth that humanity is one. But it is not enough simply to believe that in our hearts. It creates a moral imperative to act, to view all aspects of personal, social, and institutional lives through the lens of justice. It implies a reordering of our society more profound than anything we have yet achieved. And it requires that the participation of Americans of every race and background, for it is only through such inclusive participation that new moral and social directions can emerge. Whatever immediate results might come from the current demonstrations, the elimination of racism will require a sustained and concerted effort. So let it not end here today. Let us take it beyond this and let us act. Let's start having those hard conversations with our kids. You see, black people have to start having those conversations with our kids when they're in preschool, because they start noticing that kids are treating them differently. We start those conversations very young. So I'm urging the white community, start those conversations with your kids, and don't be scared that it'll do something to them. It'll only make them brave and courageous and help them stand up for their fellow human being. Because if your children do not know what's wrong, how can they fix it? If you're not having those conversations with them, how can they make a difference? Because we all know that when they're little babies, they'll run up to a black kid and hug them. We all know that, but we also know that by kindergarten, that division has started. They have started to view and see that there's something different, you know? TV keeps showing these images of black people in poor neighborhoods and, being pulled over, and TV they keep being socialized. Maybe there's something wrong with black people. So if you're not having those conversations, your children are being socialized by the media. So please, let's do better. So Thurgood Marshall once said, "We cannot play ostrich. Democracy just cannot flourish amidst fear. Justice cannot take root amidst rage. America must get to work. In the chill climate in which we live, we must go against the prevailing wind. We must dissent from the indifference. We must dissent from the apathy. We must dissent from the fear, the hatred, the mistrust. We must dissent for a nation that has buried its head in the sand, waiting in vain for the needs of its poor, its elderly, and its sick to disappear and just blow away. We must dissent from a government that has left its young without jobs, education, or hope. We must dissent from poverty of vision and the absence of moral leadership. We must dissent because America can do better. Because America has no choice but to do better. The legal system can force open doors and sometimes even knock down walls, but it cannot build bridges. The job belongs to you and to me. Afro and white, rich and poor, educated and illiterate, our fates are bound together. We are one humanity, so when a black person suffers, you too should suffer. I hope everyone here is enraged and in anguish for what happened to George Floyd, and I wish you channel that anger and anguish into action. And so I will end with this poem that I wrote. And I wrote this poem because one of my black sisters called me, and she was in so much anguish. She's been fighting this fight for so long. So I wrote this poem for her. I wrote this poem for all the black people who have suffered for so long. But I think everyone can be connected to this in some way. It's called Breathe. Because she called me and she said, "I can't breathe, Ridvan. I don't know what to do. I'm in so much rage and in so much anger." And I said to her, "Breathe." So to all my brothers and sisters who are feeling sad, angry, numb, tired, overwhelmed, and enraged, breathe. Breathe for George. Breathe for Ahmaud. Breathe for Brianna. Breathe for the countless others whose stories were not captured on tape. Breathe for our sons and daughters. Breathe for the future generation. Breathe for our ancestors because they demand that we do so. Breathe and press on as they did for us. Breathe for unlike Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, you can. Breathe and let your anger fuel your work, your activism. Breathe and let your voice be heard. Thank you all.